welcome to Broadcasting Scotland. It's Monday the 21st of March. I'm Andrew Wilson, and this is Scotland at 7. My apologies for our delayed start to broadcasting this evening. We've been encountering a production difficulty today again. However, we're here ready to go, and so we've got the news for you and discussion as well. This evening I have the latest daily update from Ukraine on day 26 of the illegal Russian invasion. Then I'll introduce our guest for this evening, and then together we will take a look at today's headlines from Scotland and around the world. On day 26 of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, Ukraine has rejected a Russian demand for Mariupol to surrender by 5 a.m. Moscow time. Ukraine's Deputy Prime Minister, Irina Vereshchuk, said there could be no talk of any surrenders and that Russia had been informed of the response. US President Joe Biden will travel to Poland this week to discuss international efforts to support Ukraine and impose severe and unprecedented costs on Russia for its invasion, the White House has said. The discussions will follow Biden's meetings in Brussels with NATO allies, G7 leaders, and EU leaders. Zelensky called Putin's strategy a final solution for Ukraine. In an uncompromising address to the Knesset, the Israeli parliament, Ukraine's president challenged Israel over its failure to impose sanctions on Russia. 8 people have been killed following shelling of homes and a shopping district in Kyiv, according to Reuters, citing the state emergency service. Video showed firefighters rushing to rescue people trapped in the rubble of the Retroville shopping centre in Podilsky. Mariupol City Council said Russia bombed an art school where 400 civilians, including children, were sheltering. Petro Andrushenko, an advisor to the city's mayor, said there was no exact number of casualties yet. The city continues to be shelled both from the sky and the sea, Andrushenko said on Telegram. 11 Ukrainian political parties have been suspended because of their links to Russia, according to Zelensky. The country's National Security and Defence Council took the decision to ban the parties from any political activity. Most of the parties affected were small, but one of them, the opposition Platform for Life, has 44 seats in the 450-seat Ukrainian parliament. 10 million people, more than a quarter of the population, have now fled their homes in Ukraine due to Russia's devastating war, the head of the UN refugee agency, the UNHCR, said on Sunday. And at least 902 civilians have been killed and 1,459 injured in Ukraine as part of a midnight local time, as of midnight local time on Saturday, the UN Human Rights Office said. The Ukrainian parliament says that 115 Ukrainian children have been killed and at least 140 more have been injured. Germany has agreed a contract with Qatar for the supply of liquefied natural gas that will help the European country wean itself off its dependency on Russian energy. It could take several years for the deal to come into full effect because Germany has no terminals for the delivery of LNG. Meanwhile, Saudi Arabia has said it will increase oil production to meet global demand. And Turkey's foreign minister has claimed a peace deal between Russia and Ukraine is close, despite the scepticism of Western governments. But the US ambassador to the United Nations warned on Sunday that there was little immediate hope of a negotiated end to the war. Now, we are lucky enough to be joined by a regular contributor, Chris McCusker. Chris is a trade unionist, carer, disabilities advocate, and a humanitarian worker. He's also the nearest thing that South Glasgow has to the Chef Market's Waring. Chris, how are you keeping this evening?
Hello, can you hear me?
I can hear you, Chris. How are you doing this evening?
Yeah, I'm fine. Again, I've got to apologise. I'm having real IT issues, and without any children here, I can't resolve them.
Say no more. As always in Broadcasting Scotland, Chris, we will persist. We will persevere. So it's great to see you this evening. Thank you for joining us. Our first story this evening is that Ukraine has rejected out of hand an ultimatum from Moscow to surrender the devastated city of Mariupol, as authorities in Odessa accused Russia of striking residential areas in what would be the invading forces' first attack on the Black Sea port. Ukraine's Deputy Prime Minister, Irina Vereshchuk, said the government had rejected a Russian ultimatum for people in Mariupol to surrender before 5 a.m. on Monday, but said also that the situation in the besieged city was very difficult. Ukraine also turned down Moscow's offer to open 2 humanitarian corridors out of Mariupol in exchange for the residents' capitulation. Hundreds of thousands of people have been trapped in the city, many without water, heat, or power, for more than a fortnight. Officials have said at least 2,300 residents have died, with some buried in mass graves. Military experts have warned that Moscow's forces, denied an early victory, are increasingly turning to the scorched earth tactics of previous offensives in Syria and Chechnya, pulverizing the population centers with airstrikes and artillery bombardment. Russia's ground advance has stalled along most fronts, with its forces held up by a highly effective Ukrainian resistance and major logistical problems, so far failing to capture a single major Ukrainian city since the invasion began on the 24th of February. The United Nations has said that more than 10 million people, a quarter of Ukraine's pre-war population, have been displaced by the conflict, including 3.4 million who have fled abroad, mainly to Poland. It has also confirmed more than 900 civilian deaths, although the actual figure is likely to be significantly higher. Manolis Androulakis, Greece's consul general in Mariupol and the last EU diplomat to leave the city, said that what he had seen, I hope no one will ever see. Mariupol will become part of a list of cities, he said, that were completely destroyed by war. He said he shouldn't need to name them. They are Guernica, Coventry, Aleppo, Grozny and Leningrad. EU foreign and defence ministers were meeting today to discuss imposing further sanctions on Moscow, in particular whether to introduce an oil embargo on top of 4 rounds of punitive measures on Russia already imposed, including freezing Russian central bank's assets. The EU was also set to approve a new defence strategy aimed at increasing the bloc's capacity to act, including setting up a 5,000-strong rapid reaction force. So, Chris, as I understand it, the ultimatum that was delivered by the Russian Colonel General Mikhail Mizintsev was for the people of Mariupol to surrender and leave 50% to the west and 50% to Russia, or to face an escalation of the siege and then trial by military tribunal for collaborating with bandits. And that's the translation that I've seen reported. So in terms of threatening civilians and threatening them to leave in order to go to Russia, and then threatening them with trial by a military tribunal, and whilst at the same time continuing to escalate the siege, cutting off water and heat and power and food to innocent civilians, is there anything that you think that the Russian army will not do in order to achieve its target of dominating the southern port city of Mariupol?
No, absolutely not. And I don't believe that they'll hold up their side of the proposal either. I further see them, slowly, trying to take over 60%, then 70%, then 80%, and, eventually just, pushing people out until they've got full control. The problem that you have here is quite clearly Putin as a despot, and he, like any bully, like any dictator, he will not rest until he gets, exactly what he wants, what he's originally set out. So I don't believe that there's any middle ground to be found in any ongoing discussions. I don't believe that President Zelensky thinks that either. When you've got 2 people who have very different opposing views on any one situation, it's hard to find any common ground in order to start with. And I think ultimately Putin has underestimated the resolve of the Ukrainian president. I think he's underestimated the resolve of the Ukrainian people. But I think it will be telling to see how the EU. Uh, I hate to use the word retaliate, but through economic sanctions and stuff like that, what you would, in inverted commas, called a peaceful retaliation. It would be interesting to see how they're, going to up their game. Because quite clearly it's a game of political brinkmanship. And unfortunately, as we've seen demonstrated, I mean, he's bombed several buildings, several theatres and things like that, where obviously people have been sheltering. He's got no sense of compassion, to allow these people out. I mean, why suggest two humanitarian corridors and then and only sort of like offer half of what half of basically nothing, because at this moment in time that if not the whole city, large swathes of the city have actually been flattened. So I mean, how can anybody conceive that they could put any trust in what Putin proposes? As quite simply bizarre.
As you say, Chris, an art school bombed, which was being used as a shelter, a theatre that was being used as a shelter bombed at the end of last week, and 90% of the buildings in Mariupol reported by the local authority to be damaged as a result of the siege. But let's move on to our next story, which is that 50 Ukrainian orphans and their carers are supposed to be on the final leg of their long journey to the safety of Scotland today. The youngsters, ranging in ages from 2 to 19, were expected to fly to London today and enjoy a day of sightseeing tomorrow before continuing their journey on Wednesday. Their eventual arrival will be the latest leg in a journey which has its roots all the way back to 2005, when the Dnipro Kids charity was set up by supporters of the Scottish Premier League team Hibernian FC, after fans visiting local orphanages to present gifts following Hibs' European tie against Dnipro were moved to do more. The Dnipro Kids chairman, Stephen Carr, who led the evacuation effort from Lviv in Ukraine and Poland, said, "We are just thankful and relieved that we are getting the kids to the safety of the UK at last. We've known these children and their carers for many years, and when they said they wanted to get out, we were determined to help them." The assistance we have had from other charities and organisations has been very important to us. We wanted to place our thanks to them on record. It's also important to us to place our thanks on record to the UK government and the governments of both Ukraine and Poland for their help, understanding and assistance. And last but by no means least, we must pay tribute to the unstinting work done on our behalf behind the scenes by Ian Blackford MP, who helped push things over the line and helped get things done. We're grateful to Ian. Today, the youngsters are scheduled to arrive in the UK after a good night's sleep. They will enjoy a day of sightseeing in London before heading to Scotland on Wednesday. After a welcome meal at Easter Road Stadium, they will be off to the peace and quiet of rural Stirlingshire, and we hope at that stage we can let them get on with their lives. Now, this story continued to develop as we came on air this evening, and it's reported that more bureaucratic paperwork was still awaited before allowing the young people and their carers to leave Poland. It's been reported that a form required to release the group, which should have been sent from the Ukrainian government to Poland's Family and Social Policy Ministry, hasn't appeared yet. But Chris, are you surprised? And of course, the UK government are in the middle of this, continuing to insist on paperwork and full written agreements and documentation in respect of refugees. So, Chris, are you surprised that the Home Office's notorious hostile environment and all of the heartbreaking bureaucracy that it relies on now seems to be being applied to orphaned children fleeing a war?
No, no, I'm not surprised in any such way, shape, or form. I think this exercise, if we can call it that, could have been facilitated a lot smoother had we still been in the EU and had a common travel area. And you know, I mean, I'm speaking from my own perspective. My aid group, Eastwood Refugee Aid. I mean, we're hamstrung in order to get physical aid out to Poland and even France. You know, even just one border has proven a logistical nightmare. I mean, you've got the. I think we'll possibly talk about this later on. You know, you've got the problems with the one ferry line that crosses Dover to Calais, and you know that is a main artery, and you know for it to be reduced, however, you know whether it's a day, whether it's 3 days, whether it's a week, for that to be reduced down to one route is just an absolute nightmare, and that's people moving commodities. You know what we're talking about here is we're talking about human lives, and so the extra red tape and all the rest of it, whoever's fault it is, whether it's you know the fault of the Ukrainian government, or whether it's the fault of the EU, or whether it's the fault of the British government, or whether it's you know the British government being too overcautious, or, you know. I could be flippant and say, you know, what security threat could, you know, a two-year-old or a 19-year-old cause?
Exactly.
You know, this country, I've got absolutely no idea. But you know, at the end of the day, I think that they shouldn't have been putting arbitrary dates on this. You know, they should have made the announcement once all the paperwork was done, whilst at the same time, obviously keeping the children safe, and you know, made it a smoother transition. You know, it's hard enough to uproot from one foreign country into another. You know, let alone you know have the psychological trauma of well, it's no happening tonight, it's no happening again, it's no happening again. You know, so I mean that you have to think of the mental health, obviously, of these children having been promised so much, and constantly, you know, day after day being let down, and you know, so somebody
That's right.
needs to get their finger out, basically.
Absolutely. So just to finish the story off, the Dnipro Kids Appeal tweeted about an hour ago that so the flight didn't happen today due to paperwork issues. Massive thank you to the Lenny Grukovsky Foundation for helping us source accommodation in Warsaw tonight. The kids are still happy and still hopeful, as is the way often with young people. So that's encouraging, and I'm hopeful that we'll be reporting the successful transfer of these young people from Poland to the UK on Broadcasting Scotland tomorrow. But we'll move on to our next story now, which is that Nazanin Zaharie Ratcliffe has said that she should have been released from detention in Iran 6 years ago, and challenged the British government to explain why it had not paid the $400 million debt to Iran that Tehran said would bring her release earlier than last week. Speaking publicly for the first time at a press conference since she was released, she described the black hole in her heart caused by the detention, and that it was her faith that kept her from losing hope. She urged an end to the detention of other dual nationals still held in Iran, saying without their release, the meaning of freedom is never going to be complete. She paid tribute to her husband, Richard Ratcliffe, who said he would now be going into campaigning retirement after 6 years of conspicuously waiting. At several points during the press conference, she differed from her husband when he thanked the British government for bringing her home. She said she had seen 5 foreign secretaries over the course of 6 years, adding, "That is unprecedented given the politics of the UK. I love you, Richard," she continued, "respect whatever you believe, but I was told many, many times, 'Oh, we're going to get you home.' That never happened." She said that this resulted in her finding it difficult to place trust in the words of successive foreign secretaries, adding, "I mean, how many foreign secretaries does it take for someone to come home? 5? We all know how I came home. It should have happened exactly 6 years ago. I should not have been in prison for 6 years." Mizahari Ratcliffe, who was detained on the 3rd of April 2016 by the Iranian Revolutionary Guards at Imam Khomeini Airport after a holiday visit with her daughter, Gabriella, to her parents, said she had felt powerless in prison and added that her greatest moment since her return was to braid her 8-year-old daughter's hair. She said she was told early on during her detention that there was something Iran wanted from Britain and that she would not be released until they got what they wanted. She said that she had been a pawn in the hands of 2 governments over the past 6 years and added, "I do not think anybody's life should be linked to a kind of global agreement, whether it is a nuclear one or an environmental one. Every human being has got a right to be free. What really upset me was that my life was linked to something that has got nothing to do with me," she said. Mizahari Ratcliffe's MP, Tulip Siddiq, said she would be writing to the chair of the Foreign Affairs Select Committee to conduct an inquiry into the Foreign Office's handling of her case, and that was a call endorsed by Richard Ratcliffe. So, Chris, Mizahari Ratcliffe said, "How many foreign secretaries does it take for someone to come home? 5? So what do you think will Truss, Raab, Hunt, Hammond, and of course Johnson, the 5 guilty foreign secretaries, be thinking today, now that the simple thing that they failed or refused to do has been done, and Miss Sahari Radcliffe is safely home?"
I don't think that honestly, I don't think they'll be thinking anything. There's, absolutely zero thought process throughout that litany of ineptitude. And it was Boris Johnson who famously spoke out of turn to the Iranian authorities, and that scuppered any deal happening under his fantastic stewardship of yet another government post that he managed to make a mess of. So I mean, look, this is. I find it bizarre because this could have been sorted out over a weekend. I think it was Grant Shapps who was at the dispatch box last week at the House of Commons, saying that he was thankful that the Ministry of Defence had finally paid the outstanding bill that ultimately was at the root cause of Nazanin's incarceration. And this was resulting in a tank deal that occurred in 1973. So, I mean, this could have been sorted out overnight, had they paid the debt to the Iranian government. I think Nazanin's quite right in highlighting that. Again, I mean, Richard Radcliffe has been a consummate campaigner for her release, but I find it, slightly bizarre the fact that there are still people languishing in the Iranian prisons, and he's decided now that he's got his wife back, he's going to step back from political campaigning. I find that a loss to the cause. Because you will find that these people have been held on trumped up charges which are not related to them in any such way whatsoever. I mean, if you recall the facts, the Iranian government said that Nazanin Zaghari Ratcliffe was held on spying issues. And, well, I mean, I have got no idea how you link spying on a government with the supply of tanks. There is no correlation between the two. So you would probably find that the other people outstanding who are still in the under the authority of the Iranian judicial system are probably on trumped up charges as well, which could quite easily be resolved if you had any kind of level of competence within the Tory government.
Of course, Chris, it's incredible. We'll turn now to another story a little bit closer to home. And that's because a leading debt charity has called on Rishi Sunak to do more to help low-income households. Step Change, who provide the UK's most comprehensive debt advice service, has called on the UK government to increase welfare benefits and offer better support to those facing rising energy bills. The charity would also like to see the UK government increase benefits by at least 7%, increase funding to local councils, and expand the Warm Homes discount. The SNP has already called for similar measures, including matching the game-changing Scottish Child Payment, reversing the £200 energy loan into a grant, and reversing the cuts to universal credit. Commenting, the SNP Shadow Chancellor, Alison Thulis MP, said Rishi Sunak must listen to the experts and implement the changes required to tackle the Tory-made cost of living crisis. So far, all we have heard is a series of half-baked ideas that don't go anywhere near far enough to tackle the crisis. We need to see a bold, comprehensive package of measures that will lift households out of poverty. So, Chris, if energy bills hit £3,000 a year, Step Change have said, sorry, and £3,000 a year is what the energy industry is forecasting. Step Change are saying that the most financially vulnerable households will be spending £1 in every £6 that they earn on energy costs. Now, the definition of fuel poverty is £1 in 10. So if the £1 in 6 is correct, then to me that sounds like an unprecedented growth in real poverty in such a short period of time. Do you think is permitting such a catastrophe to happen is it a matter of ideology for Sunak? He has already said over the weekend that he will not fully protect people from the consequences of rising prices.
I don't think it's an ideology on Rishi Sunak's part. I think again he is hamstrung in what he can do because there is no political will within the Tory party to put an end to this. What could only be described as austerity on steroids. Is what we're going through here, and you have to have political will in order to change something, and quite clearly, anyone can tell that we're heading towards an unmitigated disaster with the rise in energy costs, the rise in the cost of living, the ever burgeoning inequality of day-to-day poverty within communities, the length and breadth of the country. We're not just talking about England and Wales and certain parts of Northern Ireland, certain parts of Scotland. We're talking about the whole country is actually going through this process, and it's not going to be missed in the leafy suburbs that I live in, the likes of East Renfrewshire, where it's akin to the again wealthy leafy suburbs of Surrey and in the southeast of England. People are going to feel it in their pockets, and and make no mistake, I predicted this way back before Brexit actually was enacted, that people won't feel the effects of Brexit until the middle classes start feeling it in their pocket. And that's possibly when we're going to get a bite back, where they're actually going to hopefully rebel at the polling booths and force change in this government. Because I mean, we've had 10 years of Tory austerity, and as I say, now it just seems to be ramped up, pumped up, full of steroids. You're now paying in the region of 165 to 170 for a litre for your petrol, and adding that to the up ramp of solid fuel prices, to heat your homes. You're now left between the devil and the deep blue sea. Whereas, if you can't afford to heat your home, then you can maybe, possibly have enough money to put £10 in your car so you can sit in front of your house with the heater on in the car in order to get you know a bit of heat, and
Of
it's
course.
honestly it's absolutely woeful. It really is, and I can just it is only going to get worse, sadly.
Absolutely. We'll be looking out for the bite back in the streets of leafy East Renfrewshire, and I know you'll be there to report on it for us. But that was our final item this evening in the shortened version of Scotland at 7. In making these programmes, Broadcasting Scotland relies on the support of viewers and others who value our distinctive approach to news and current affairs. If you would like to support us, then please consider subscribing or donating to Broadcasting Scotland. You will find the link to do that on the screen now. Meantime, we will be here again tomorrow evening with the next edition of Scotland at 7, so please tune in and join us then. I would like to say thank you to everyone who has been watching this evening, and especially to our guest, Chris McCusker. Thanks, Chris.
No, thanks for persevering with my IT issues.
Thanks for joining us, Chris. So that's the way it is at very nearly Scotland at 8. I hope that you can join us again soon on Broadcasting Scotland, but in the meantime, please keep warm and keep well. Bye-bye.